That's a beautiful shot. Such class and timing. Short. Absolute beauty. Overpitched.
If batting is an art form, then this man is one of the greatest artists of his generation.
That's a nice shot.
With a flick of his wrists, he can send the ball any which way and he'll make it look good. He's an aesthete's delight, an old world charmer in a brash new generation. Yet he's a match winner, a nemesis for the Australians, a hungry run getter. A right-handed batsman with elegance usually reserved for the left-handed. A man whose bat speaks of the history of the game. VVS Laxman on the golden generation.
Another magnificent innings from VVS Laxman to salute a terrific innings.
In the middle, an impassive, calm Laxman.
Short.
He was about to turn the match and the series on its head.
That's hammered away off the back foot.
Helped and supported by Rahul Dravid, Laxman built an innings of such sheer power and beauty that the Australians, never afraid of anything, learned to fear Team India.
That's nicely played by Laxman.
He's trying to leave it.
Under intense pressure and the driven, relentless opposition, Laxman constructed an artistic miracle. A step backwards, a short bat swing, and the ball would race to the boundaries. A despairing Aussie fielder in chase. For 2 whole days, Kolkata witnessed this magic, often called the greatest batting display of the modern era.
And there's the double 100 for VVS Laxman.
At the end of those 2 days, the Aussies had their own name for VVS Laxman.
He is VVS, yeah, very, very special Laxman. He just goes and bats. Whether it's a good ball, can go for a 4, is something, a mixture of Rahul Dravid and Sehwag together.
Hyderabad, an aristocratic city known for its rich royal past and its modern IT boom. A city of Nizams and the famous Hyderabadi biryani. It's also home for some of the most artistic cricketers India has produced. It was only right that Laxman was born here. Both his parents were doctors and Laxman too was all set to join the profession.
I always wanted to become a doctor, and in my 11th I took medicine and I wanted to continue and become a doctor like my father, who was my role model.
He got 98 of the 100 in science, and he had a dilemma whether to serve the country with his bat or serve the country with the stethoscope as parents are doing. Then he took about a couple of days in making a decision. After 2 days he came and told, "Dad, I've decided to serve the country with a bat."
He was a shy, quiet boy, but with the bat in his hand, Laxman was a natural, and his talent was apparent to anyone who saw him.
I still remember one of the coaches there asked him to grip the bat, take a stance, and he saw the stance and said, "He has got a wrong grip." I said, "Okay, fine, but let him play, and okay, he can come, and you come and take him after another 1 hour, you can come back and take him." So I went back. When I went back, his first reaction was, he's very talented.
As a kid also, Laxman was never a flamboyant personality or a flamboyant player. He was always consistent. He was always there when you needed him.
Laxman's flair with the bat was impressive enough for him to be picked for the Indian under-19 team to play against Australia. It was love at first sight for the young Hyderabadi. He averaged over 110 in 3 tests. It's an affair that's still going strong.
The under-19 series against Australia youth team in 1994, where we were playing against a strong Australia youth team where Brett Lee, Gillespie, Andrew Simons, Matthew Nicholson, there were a lot of talented cricketers. Mike Hussey were there, and I was the highest run getter for India under-19 in that tournament. So I think that actually got me in reckoning and got me the recognition in Indian cricket, because our coach Sandeep Patel in fact mentioned at that moment that I was ready to play for the country.
Laxman was piling on the runs in the domestic circuit as well. But after an exceptional result in his school leaving exam, he was at a crossroads: cricket or medicine.
It was very important once I took a decision of taking cricket as a profession, the period I gave myself 5 years time, that is from say 17 years to 22 years, and if I don't make it to the Indian team by the 22nd year, I would stop playing cricket and I would go back and do my medicine. So I think from that moment, from the age of 17, I was really focused, and it was only cricket. My life was only cricket, nothing else.
It was all the time he needed, and he scored freely in domestic cricket. An amazing talent was knocking on Team India's doors.
I heard about him from his colleague in the India under-19 side. I was anticipating something like that when I eventually played against VVS Laxman. He didn't disappoint me. I think he scored about 70-80 runs, and he was also a medium pace bowler those days, if I'm not wrong. He was more of an all-rounder, but fortunately for Indian cricket and thankfully for Laxman, that he concentrated on his batting and he became such a wonderful player.
Everyone said, "Oh, you have to go out and see him. He's amazing. He's this, he's new Azharuddin from Azharuddin country, and you have to go out and watch." And he was just such a total pleasure to watch. You could forget about the score, you could forget about the match situation, you could just watch him bat.
Laxman made his debut in the same year that Sourav Ganguly and Rahul Dravid made theirs. In November 1996, he made a gritty 51 against South Africa, one of only 2 half-centuries in a low-scoring game to set up a win for India.
So I think it was a dream come true, because every kid in India dreams of playing for the country, and my dream was realized when I donned that India cap in 1996.
Despite their short debut, Laxman was finding it hard to break into a talented Indian middle order playing at their peak. There was just no place for him. He was pushed up to open the innings, something he had never done in his life.
He's cleaned him up there, right through the gate.
Laxman was put straight into the firing line, selected as an opener for tours of South Africa and West Indies against some of the best fast bowlers in the world on fast, bouncy tracks. Playing in a position he wasn't comfortable in, Laxman was bound to fail, and he was dropped at the end of the West Indies tour.
Problem for me was the moment I used to fail in a couple of innings. The people used to brand me as a non-regular opener, and then I used to be dropped. So that really hurt me. So I think that 1996 to 2000 experience really toughened me up.
Faced with a crisis, Laxman took an extremely gutsy decision. He'll play in the Indian team only if he was given a space in the middle order.
There was a test against Zimbabwe, a weaker team at Nagpur, and Chandu Bode, I think, was the chairman of the selection committee, and he went up to him and he said that, if you want to place in the side, you'll have to open. He said, "No, I'm a middle order batsman, I'll only bat in the middle order." Now, it's not very easy to do that, because the Zimbabwe attack was very pedestal. He could have opened, scored runs and, kept his place. But I think he had made up his mind that this is not my cup of tea.
Laxman backed his boldness with a statement so strong that the national selectors had no answer. He notched up an incredible 1,415 runs in the 1999-2000 Ranji season, a record that still stands.
Stress management looks to be very, very highly performed by him, because his profession requires a very good stress management. So I think whenever he was not selected, whenever he was dropped, sometimes with a very soft criteria, he felt embarrassed and a little depressed, but it was very fast that he recovered.
It took almost 5 years since his debut, a slow start by Indian standards, but Laxman was finally ready to make his mark on the big stage.
Oh, what a shot for VVS Laxman. That is a wonderful century. Exactly as
there were no surprises in India's tour of Australia in early 2000. The best team in the world was slicing through Team India in ruthless fashion. A terribly lopsided contest. But it's here that Laxman finally cemented his place in the squad. Laxman had a poor run, like the rest of the team. But in the final test in Sydney, he suddenly erupted with an innings of fantastic domination. In a match that India lost by an innings and in which no other Indian batsman ever reached a half-century, Laxman hit a majestic 167 of just 198 balls.
Getting 100, I mean my first test 100, because it took me 4 years to get my first test 100. That's number one, why that knock was special. Second was against a quality bowling attack. There were a lot of reasons for me to be happy with that knock, and that knock was really the turning point as far as the self-belief is concerned.
It had taken Laxman 17 tests to score his maiden century, but it was enough to prove his abilities both to himself and his team. The Hyderabad boy had finally emerged from his cocoon, and it was time to show just what he was capable of. When Australia came calling in 2001, it was the perfect opportunity. But will the Aussies slaughter Team India yet again? The first test was conceded.
Short delivery. Oh, he's got him.
And Laxman wasn't a certainty for the second.
That is absolute. He's stunned.
Destiny sort of changes on so little that he got the go ahead and he could play. And at every innings break when Laxman came in, he had to be. He had a problem with his back, so his back was sort of tilting over to one side. His back was compensating for pain on one side by sort of tilting over on the other. And every time he came back from an innings break, he had to be given a massage and almost straightened up.
To the air, and yes, he's got him. That's out. He's got him. Taken at second slip. Ricky Ponting gets another straightforward catch off the bowling.
In the second test in Kolkata, India were following on. Laxman had scored a 51 in the first innings, coming in at number 6, and he was promoted to the coveted number 3 position in the second innings. The rest is history.
Oh, it's 4 as well. Boy, they are turning it on. Oh, and it's and there's the double 100 for VVS Laxman. He's got it through. That's a fantastic century.
Everyone expected us to lose, and me and Rahul, we had that partnership on the 4th day, and suddenly things changed for the country. And from that moment onwards, I think after that match, everyone had the belief that, irrespective of what situation we are in, we can come out of that, and turn the things around. And I think that test match showed us and gave that confidence.
That's the end of the test match. India have won. India have won in dramatic style.
That position India went on to win when Australia enforced the follow-on. I think you don't find too many teams enforcing the follow-on nowadays, unless and until you're playing against a Zimbabwe or a Bangladesh.
Oh, this will frustrate McGrath. He's creating the half chance.
That was one of the most significant innings played by an Indian in terms of also the impact it has had. That series has had a huge impact on the way Indian team was looked at. And after that, India started showing that they could win not only just in India, but outside India as well.
Oh, that's a beautiful shot.
It was the beginning of an absolutely golden period for Laxman.
56 average.
Kolkata witnessed another stunning innings from him, this time against the West Indies in 2002, to give India a clean sweep in the series. But his best was always reserved for Australia. His love for tormenting the champions was a nightmare for Steve Waugh. In India's tour of Australia 2003, a back-to-the-wall 303-run stand with his favourite partner Rahul Dravid to set up a famous win in Adelaide. A dazzling 178 in Sydney to seal the series.
For VVS Laxman, he is the scourge of Australian cricket.
Steve Waugh, playing his farewell test, could only look on helplessly.
He has always risen to the occasion. He has always thrived against better opposition. He has risen to the challenge of playing against the best team in the world.
Yes, they are very two different players. That's what makes these partnerships very interesting to watch. On one hand, Laxman defying the logic or the grammar of technique. On the other hand, the master of technique and grammar, both joining hands together.
And then there was an astonishing fall. The fluency was gone. The dazzling cuts and drives choked. Laxman was rattled.
Laxman is so strong.
Though he was still India's lifeline in times of major crisis, he was failing with the bat too often.
So that was a very frustrating part. But I certainly don't think that that mentally he wasn't in it. I just think it was one of those things that just sort of piled up and happened one after the other, and that the eagerness for him to get a big score just sort of got the better of him at most.
Laxman's ODI fortunes too were marked by constant ups and downs. Though he hit combative centuries in coloured clothes, his consistency and fitness were always under the scanner. And one of his lifelong ambitions was shattered when he wasn't picked for the 2003 World Cup squad. Laxman knew the chance would never come again.
Has bowled a beauty.
It was very unfortunate that I missed that World Cup. Yeah, it came as a rude shock to me when the selection took place and I got the news that I was not picked in the squad. Yeah, but it was I think the lowest point in my career at that moment.
Laxman bounced back in the longer format of the game when Pakistan came calling in 2007, setting up a crucial series win for India. He was once again part of the backbone of Indian cricket and heading towards a glorious personal landmark, 100 tests. And what's better, Australia were knocking on the door. 2008, a very special year for a very special cricketer.
56 average.
This was Laxman's 100th test match. Only 7 other people have played 100 tests or more for India, a truly elite group. For Laxman, there was the added pleasure of facing Australia. Just perfect.
One of the great entertainers cricket has ever seen.
A brilliant double century, his second, set up India to reclaim the Border Gavaskar trophy.
It was a very satisfying moment, because the background I came from, parents being doctors, all my cousins being either doctors or engineers, emphasis in school and in the family being on academics, coming and representing the country from that kind of background itself was a great feeling.
That is through again.
Playing 100 tests was significant in more than one way for this humble man, because for most of these tests, his head was on the chopping block. An unnecessary burden that he carried with dignity and a smile.
He's a very quiet guy. He doesn't make a noise, when he's dropped. And that is one reason he became an easy prey for every selector to when it came to dropping somebody in the middle order.
Shot. Wide outside.
As a batsman, Laxman is all beauty and class. He may not have incredible statistics to show, but beyond the numbers lies the magic that made his generation so special.
Just Laxman at his peak.
He scored when it really mattered.
Oh, that's glorious.
I always look at Laxman and I think of solidity, and I always think that Laxman brings a calmness to a dressing room.
He's the Michelangelo for us. He's an artist.
Up to the air, but there was as well. He likes it, shot it.
Laxman's contributions with the bat too is only one side of the story. His value for Team India goes much deeper. It lies in the untold stories of camaraderie, the way he de-stressed the team in the dressing room with a smile, and the lightness with which he shouldered his responsibilities.
That's beautifully placed.
मैं कभी उन्हें दुखी, रोते हुए, नाराज नहीं देखा. हमेशा हंसते रहते हैं. कोई उन्हें कुछ भी बोले वो फिर भी हंसते रहते हैं. कोई कुछ भी मजाक करे वो हंसते रहते हैं. किसी को आज तक वापस कमेंट करते हुए मैंने नहीं सुना VVS लक्ष्मण को, और इसलिए उनका नाम हम लोगों ने साईं बाबा रखा कि वो बिल्कुल ही शांत स्वभाव के हैं और सिर्फ हंसते रहते हैं.
Laxman still has a few more flicks of his wrists, a few more back to the wall fight backs.
On the back foot, cut away.